Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the ROKER RAPPORT podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back for the new season, here to talk once more about Sunderland, but not in League One, in the Championship, which is nice. And join me is Martin Wanless. Hi Martin, you have just woke up, haven't you? So we'll apologise to people if you're a bit bassy.
I just woken up after the match, which was last night for me. And it was probably the best kick-off time of the season.
Just have to clarify, you're not a lazy bastard. You're actually
well, I am as well,
time.
but
yeah,
I am
yeah.
as well. But, no, it was a 9 o'clock kick-off in Australia last night, so that's probably the best kick-off time of the season. But after the match, I lie there, replay things over and over in my head, and wonder about different incidents. So yeah, it takes us a while to get to sleep afterwards, but no, all good.
We'll bring you up to speed, I'm sure. And also joining us is Craig Chapman. Hello, Craig.
Good evening. Speaking of lazy bastards, here I am.
Yeah, in your dressing gown.
Well, there you go. You know, just like normal.
Well, the long-time listeners of this pod will remember the days when we used to do this in a studio, and it was a little bit more organised. Now, because of the pandemic, we're just hermits, basically. But it allows us to connect. Martin, you wouldn't be able to come into a studio.
It'd be a long trip to get to a studio every week, wouldn't it?
It would. The game then saw Sunderland draw 1-1 with Coventry in the Championship. It was a good start from the lads. We played on the front foot. We got into them. They came at us, to be fair, as well. You know, it wasn't as though Coventry just sat back and let the occasion sort of get on their case early doors. And yeah, we started well. We got a goal, one that I wasn't expecting, but it sounds like from listening to Jack Clarke and Alex Neil after the game that this is something that they've talked about quite a lot, which was, of course, Jack Clarke getting in at the back post to score a header. Apparently, it's something Alex Neil has told him he needs to do repeatedly. And Jack Clarke said, I've been nagged about it all through pre-season. So it was nice to actually arrive back post and get a goal. I thought first half, we were the better team. They did have a decent chance, which Patterson saved. Second half, though, was their game. And at full time, when I walked out the ground with me mate, I said, to be honest, that's probably a fair result, all things considered. Would you agree, Craig? Do you think that was probably a fair result and a fair reflection of how the game panned out?
Yeah, 100%. I think it really did highlight the quality of the Championship. Truth be told, we give a really good account of ourselves against a team who ultimately will be there or thereabouts, challenging, I think, for the playoffs again. I think they finished mid-table last season. And I'm pleased overall because they've had a good head start on us to life in the Championship. We got promoted 2 years ago. They were better than us then. And although, look, like you said, you know, they pretty much dominated large spells of the ball. I think we restricted them to just a few chances. But look, even then, obviously, it's a great goal for them to get back into it. But overall, really happy with the performance. I think the mood of full-time certainly indicated really that I think as a fan base, we're well aware that obviously it's a big gulf in class now, coming from League One up to this league. Typically, you would see us score a goal last season and teams would be shit scared. You know, they would drop off us, but credit to Coventry, they didn't. Even though we had to spell again just after, they really weathered the storm. They got back into it. And yeah, like I say, ultimately, it's definitely a fair result. Certainly a good game for the neutral.
Do you reckon, Martin? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely fair result. I think it kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the game. There was a few spells where we had the chance to score a second, which probably would got us to 3 points, but at the final whistle, I was quite relieved that we'd got a point because I thought they were coming on strong. Their equaliser, it was a class goal, but it had been coming for 20 minutes or so, hadn't it? They'd been threatening. And yeah, look, I think it's a good result, good point. I think it was important not to get beat the first game of the season. I think that kind of dictates the mood of things going into the next few weeks. And also, it was a bit of a reality check for us as a fan base in terms of the quality that we're going to be facing. And, you know, it did highlight a few areas where we do need to strengthen the team. So hopefully from a board level and football director level, we're kind of looking at that and going, yeah, you know, we need to invest in the team a little bit more over the next few weeks. I think if we'd won 4 or 5-0, there's probably a tendency to go, it's all right, we'll be fine. But yeah, good point.
And just to butt in on that point, Alex Neil said after the game apparently he wants 4 or 5 more players. So it just shows he doesn't it. He's not satisfied at all with what he's got. I think someone made a good point. We haven't loaned anybody yet. Have we? Or have we?
Sims.
No, sorry, Sims is a loan. But we have still got a fair allowance of loan players.
No, we have, yeah.
Left. And we'll probably comment this when we talk about the game a little bit more. But in fact, let's talk about it now. Like Coventry, when they really kicked into gear in that second half, it was as a result of bringing on players from the bench. They had like an abundance of quality players to bring on. And we didn't take advantage of the fact that we could make, because obviously now you're allowed to make 5 subs, aren't you? So they just brought on like 3 really big, quick lads who caused us problems particularly down the right-hand side. And it changed the game totally. And that's what Alex Neil will be looking at. I think what he said was that no team has finished higher than 15th after being promoted in the first season in the Championship, which just shows you the gulf that there actually is in quality. And we've got to obviously be pretty content with what we've got right now. We have got a good squad. But he's going to be looking at his sort of squad overall and thinking, you know, I could do with that type of player to bring on. I could do with 3 or 4 lads who, if we're losing a game, I can depend on to bring on. And obviously right now he isn't totally satisfied with the team. So that's the big difference I noticed in the two teams. I didn't actually think in terms of quality, Craig, there was a massive gulf between us and Coventry in terms of the way the game sort of went. I thought, like I say, first half we were the better team. Second half they were the better team. But their squad, obviously, they saw the fruits of that, didn't they, when they brought on those players?
Yeah, they opened us up a little bit more in the second half. And like you say, I think that's where, obviously, the depth really shone through. It's worth noting, though, that our starting lineup, like, it consisted of 10 of the players that, like, got us promoted last year. The only new person in there was Dan Ballard. And there's been a lot of questions over some of the lads in our team. A lot of questions over the likes of Sunderland and Gooch, League 09 and stuff like that, whether they can compete at this level. So I was really pleased for Gooch in particular, because I tell you what, when he was on it in the first half, he absolutely tore that fullback to shreds. And the ball in was
superb in the first half.
The ball in was incredible. Absolutely incredible for Jack Clarke as well. He really sold that.
Wasn't just the ball though, was it? It was the way that he got past the fullback. I don't know whether the fullback had been told, like, Lyndon Gooch likes to come, because he does, when you watch him, when he approaches a fullback, generally he cuts inside, then he tries to go back down the outside.
Yeah.
And what he did in that instance was he literally just went round the outside straight
really
away.
Clever.
Totally caught the fullback off guard and done a great job to get the ball in.
Yeah, you could see, I think there was an enormous relief from him as well. Before running over the rest of the team, he turned round, sort of raised his arms aloft to like the west and the southwest corner. And I think that was him basically saying, like, look, you know, maybe I've had my doubts, but I can definitely cut it at this level. And I think quite rightly, like you said, look, I mean, yeah, in the second half, they had, you know, a large amount of possession, but ultimately, besides a handful of chances, they never really threatened us. And ultimately, one of those big chances was us almost shooting ourselves in the foot by giving possession away on the edge of the box. But
oh God, do you know what it is? I'd block that out. Jesus, you've just brought that back to us. What the hell was that? Oh my God, you've just, do you know, like when you forget something really bad and then someone brings it back up and you're like, oh my, like a nightmare.
Yeah, look, that was our bad bit, wasn't it? That was our bad bit. But to be fair, like I say, the goal that's got them back into the game, there's nothing you can do about that. I thought Patterson did really well, but it doesn't matter who's in goal. Nobody's stopping that. It was a brilliant finish.
Yeah.
Oh, it was mint. And that, to be fair, that lad who's up front for Coventry, I think he's been linked with Premier League moves. Like, that's what I was trying to say to my friend as well when I was walking away from the grounds. Like, we've got to remember, like, all right, in the sort of context of the game, we're probably just as good as them over the sort of 90 minutes, pretty even match. But they've got a handful of players who probably could play in the Premier League because they're a good team, and we're not used to that. We used to play in League One sides who've got a few players who are good enough for the Championship. So it's a big change in that sense. And those players, like, don't want to butcher his name, is it?
I can't pronounce it.
I might be wrong. But he's obviously, I think he got 18 goals in this league last year. And you look at him, he's young, he's athletic, player, he's a beast. You can just see it, can't you? Like, you switch off for that moment and that's what happens, you know?
Yeah, when I was walking back over from the ground at full time, I got speaking to a family of Coventry fans, and they basically said that they don't expect that they'll have him at all by the end of the window, and I thought that was quite surprising. I know that O'Hare, the lad who's been linked with Burnley, it seems like they've got a lot of eyes on some of their squad at the minute, and obviously this lad's give a good account of himself, done it in front of the Sky cameras, so I think realistically speaking there's going to be a lot of suitors for him, but that ultimately shows the quality. If you get the ball in and around that area, what a finish.
But I was listening to the preview pod that we did with the Coventry fan that Chris did earlier in the week, and he was saying that there's 3 or 4 players like O'Hare and like the lad who scored that they're just keeping the fingers crossed that they can get to the end of the transfer window without them going. And the Coventry side come September could be a different side altogether if you take 2 or 3 of those players out. So it's kind of pot luck who you play at the start of the season before the transfer window finishes, because you'd hope that we're stronger come the 1st of September, and some of these teams that we're coming up against could be weakened, couldn't they?
Yeah. I stuck a tweet out prior to recording just asking some of the listeners to drop some questions in, and Owen Sarah and Marley Gibson have both basically asked the same question about the performance, asking, is that level of performance what we need to keep throughout the season to be stable? Marley said, is this the game we should really use as a benchmark for the season? What do you think, Martin? What you saw from Sunderland, did that give you confidence that we're going to be all right, or do you need to say more?
Oh, look, I think if we keep the same team as we sort of lined up with and have on the bench for the whole season, you can tell it's going to be a bit of a struggle towards the bottom end of the middle bit of the league, I would say. I think we saw some good bits. I think we've got players who can score goals and create chances from an attacking point of view. The biggest area I kind of have a little bit of a concern about and would like to see us strengthen is in midfield. I think we struggle to get a real hold on the game and change their domination of the game for spells. And
just to put in there, I actually think he picked Embleton and he picked Dan Neil for that reason, because he thought they're going to keep it on the deck, so we need to try and play football.
Yeah.
And Embleton got hooked, which I thought was a little bit unfair, actually. I thought Dan Neil had a decent first half, but second half he just wasn't in the game.
He was anonymous second half, wasn't he?
Yeah, and that was, I mean, since we brought it up, I stuck a poll out on Twitter just before we recorded as well, asking people which position they think we need to strengthen next. 80.5% of people said centre mid. Now, I think there's a bit of a shift since the game, because before the game, I think a lot of people were pretty happy with our central midfield options, but I think maybe people thought we could do with something in there.
No, that's right. I think you kind of need somebody who will probably do a little bit of a different job to what we've got available. Like we've got a few midfield players who can give us options in there, and they all do something a little bit different. Like I thought Corey Evans had a decent game off the ball. He obviously had a couple of misplaced passes that gave them a chance in the first half, and Dan Neil gave him a chance in the second half, although it was a bad ball to put him into that situation, wasn't it? It was funny because I was watching Coventry pass it around at the back, and whether it's just my age or what, but I've got a real aversion to teams passing it around like that at the back, because you're just going to give somebody a chance. I was thinking we're going to get a chance from Coventry doing this here, because they were doing it, and then the one time that we really tried to do it, and we offered them up an open goal, really, didn't we? But no, look, we need a different option in centre midfield, just somebody, and it's that kind of mythical centre midfield player, isn't it, who can really dominate and dictate and do almost everything.
We just need Kevin De Bruyne. We'll just get him. That's all we need.
But no, I think, as you say, Gav, I think that sentiment will have changed after the 90 minutes that we saw. I think if you'd done it beforehand, full-back and striker probably would have come up ahead of centre midfield. But yeah, and again, as I said, it shines a light for everybody on where we need a bit of strengthening, and we've got a few weeks to do that. So yeah,
I've to be honest, on the last couple of pods I've banged this point home, and I stick by it because I will all season. But I'm very much in favour of sort of sticking by Dan Neil, giving Jay Matete a chance. Like, I want to see these players in the team, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't go out and shore up those options as well. Like when we were losing a little bit of control in the midfield, it was Luke O'Nien who was coming on, and we know we know all about. He's been there 5 years now. We know all about Luke O'Nien's strengths and weaknesses as a player. Corey Evans is a very steady central midfielder, but again, he isn't going to score your goals. He's not going to dominate games from the middle, which is probably the player we're lacking at the minute. And I think Dan Neil can be that player, Craig. I just don't know. I don't know whether it's going to happen straight away. I think he spent a lot of time out the team last season, and he's got a bit of readjusting to do, as they all do with changing leagues. Adam Hegarty's said on Twitter that with regards to the poll, he would have probably voted for central midfield, but he's asked, do we give Matete a chance first? It all feeds into that same sort of argument, doesn't it, that we've got these two young lads who we've put a lot of faith in, And Matete, in terms of Matete, a lot of money went into that deal to get him here. In terms of Dan Neil, all of the praise he's had, all of the, the plaudits, the contract that he got, probably talk of building a team around him long term and stuff. So where do you stand with that midfield and where we go from here?
I think one of the biggest observations I had is with their team, even though they're of like a similar build, is just how physical they were. They always seemed to say shove us off the ball a little bit, and annoyingly, when it was us kind of shoving them off the ball, of course the referee was favouring every single decision. But I think we have for such a long time lacked like a real physicality in midfield. If you could just have somebody of the build and mould of say like an Alfred and Dyer, and maybe just instill like a footballing brain, maybe even just put Dan Neil into that body, then you probably got the midfielder you want. And the moment, truth be told, I still don't know what type of midfielder Jay Matete is. And I think he will get his chance to have a go. Obviously, with such a long season, obviously cup games, there is going to be heavy squad rotation he'll manage. But again, for me at the moment, based on today's performance, I'd be looking at that. I'd want a ball carrier, basically, somebody who can go box to box. And I think there was a couple of times where some of the lads did look a little bit off the pace. But I think that's understandably so, because it's the first game of the season. They are going to perhaps look a little bit leggy until they get those minutes up, because, to be fair, we didn't have the longest pre-season schedule and we did come back late after the playoffs. So, I'd ideally think that a centre midfielder is going to be amongst one of those 4 or 5 players that Alex Neil wants to, we're spoiled for attacking riches, I think, to be fair, in terms of, Pritchard, we've got Embleton, Roberts, Clarke, Stewart, Sims now as well. So I think that deficiency really is just lying in midfield. I mean, you mentioned 09. I think, to be fair to him, obviously it was probably a hard game to come on for anybody because of the substitutions that they made. They began to control the tempo. So I think at that point the game had got away from us. And the thing that I was pleased with is that he was happy to at least, get stuck in. And that's where I think where we just fell apart a little bit is when they really began to stretch us with legs in that second half, and that's ultimately where the goal come from. So if we could have somebody to shore that up a little bit, because at least Corey Evans, he's got the intelligence, he knows what to do. But I just think by the time Coventry had equalised, everybody was dead on their feet.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it, like, Gav, to pick up a point that you raised earlier about the 5 subs, because if you think about you've got 7 people on the bench, you can use 5 of them, one's going to be a keeper. So pretty much all 6 of those outfield subs, you've got to have a reason for having them on the bench. It's not like in seasons gone by where you chuck a few people on the bench, you can only select 3 of them. And the fact that we only brought on 2 out of 5 changes kind of speaks volumes about how Alex Neil perceives the quality he has on the bench to change the game. Mm-hmm. And picking up on the midfield options, like the only centre midfield option we had on the bench was 09.
It was 09, yeah.
Matete wasn't on the bench, Winchester wasn't on the bench. And we had Bailey Wright, Trey Hume, Elise, and 09 who can all play in defence. So, like, we didn't have the options there to really change that game if it went the way that it did. And I think that's going to, it's a different dynamic for the manager to be able to make 5, because it opens up first half subs a lot more than we've ever seen previously. But you've got to have those options that are game changing. And to have essentially 3 centre halves on the bench, with, if you count 09 as a player who can fill in there, we kind of limited ourselves a little bit to change that game if it did go the way it did.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the subs when you brought them up there. Their subs, like the ones they didn't use, obviously one was a goalkeeper, former Sunderland player, Ben Wilson. Michael Rose, guessing by the fact he's number 4, he's a midfielder. Callum Doyle, of course. And then you look at the 4 who did come on. Tyler Walker, who's a big, powerful, quick forward. Fankati Dabo, who I think's been there probably since they were in League One. I remember him being quite a good player for them in League One, if I remember rightly. Fabio Tavares, who came on, caused a lot of problems. Casey Palmer came on and caused a lot of problems. Like, you're looking at those players in the profile, they're all big, athletic, quick lads with pace and power and who can drive at teams, and that's what they did. They looked at it, they said, Sunderland are pretty pedestrian at the minute, let's put some pace on the pitch and get at them. And the lads they put on down the right hand side, they caused Jack Clarke a lot of bother. And like that, I would say that because he actually played left wing back. I think Alex Neil said in his comments after the game that Clarke was playing left wing back, which sitting in my seat at the game I hadn't actually realised. I just thought we were playing a back 4. But yeah, he made mention of that. And sort of Clarke has basically played that position, hasn't he, pretty much since he came. Like probably more as a left wing back than he has anywhere else. And I would say that his strengths and weaknesses don't lie in defence. So that probably highlights another issue as well, doesn't it? Like Dennis Sirkin, who was signed as a left back, has played left of a three quite a lot under Alex Neil. We've had Jack Clarke playing left wing back, who's a right-footed forward. Are we short at full back? Do we need another left back, do you think, Craig?
I'd say so. I mean, this is pretty much the exact situation we found ourselves at the start of last season, wasn't it, when Dan Neil was playing left back? But I think what does give us a little bit of reassurance is, although at the moment we are under strength, no doubt, and we do need to bring in a couple of more bodies, is that at least if, kind of Christian Speakman's sort of history at the club tells us anything, is that he's happy to wait for his targets. And ultimately, you don't want to give teams around you a good head start, but also you don't want to bring in, poor players just to fill up the squad, just to basically bolster the ranks.
Yeah.
So at least over the course of the next couple of weeks, you think when Premier League clubs begin to make their moves, and then gradually start to unload some of their unwanted players, you think that's where we'll probably kick into life a little bit. We still remain to be linked with, with the likes of Nathan Broadhead and a few other players. So you think that might actually go to the wire. Fullback wise, yeah. I mean, look, like I say, I'm a long-term fan of Lyndon Gooch, but ultimately, is he a natural right back? It remains to be seen if he's going to get a long period there. But what I want from every single player, regardless of how much I like them, is I want people to push them. I want them to know that if they have like a bad game, if they drop their performance, that somebody is going to be waiting in the ranks, basically ready to take it off them. So they're going to have to fight back twice as hard to get into the team. And no matter who they are, whether it's Patterson and goal or even Ross Stewart up front, we need to ensure that we've got depth, because ultimately what changed that game today was Coventry bringing on those players. And that allowed them to change the shape. And obviously, like I say, they opened us up and they came at us with such a speed that we just couldn't cope in the end. So a couple of weeks from now, if we can do that to other teams, if we can bring 5 subs off the bench, then I think we're going to be in a much healthier position. But like I say, we can go back to, is it a good point or not? I think ultimately we've got to look at that today and say we're nowhere near at our full strength, yes, or at least what Alex Neil wants. And we've still went toe-to-toe with a top-half championship side who are favoured, obviously, for the playoffs. And we've come away with a good point. So, yeah, there's certainly room for us to grow, but there's not room for panic stations over recruitment, I would say, just yet. I'd give it time.
No, you're totally right. I think people have just got to remain patient, and they have been. I think the vast majority of fans can see what they're trying to do. They can see the strategy. Obviously, when you hear Alex Neil talk about it, he doesn't seem like he's frustrated by it. He's just being honest. He said, of course I want more players, but we have a way of doing things, and this is the way it is. And we've got like a month left. Like, that's the other thing. There's a full month left of the transfer window. There's a lot of football to be played in that time as well. We'll get what we need. Although I have talked about this in great depth over the last few weeks, so I won't bore people further. We'll go back to the game. You touched on a positive there with the fact that we went toe-to-toe with this team. One player who stood out, certainly in the eyes of Andy, who does our player ratings, and Sky, was Alex Pritchard, Martin. Player who's played a lot of football in the Championship, player who's proven himself at the top end of this league, player who's had Premier League moves. We know how lucky we were to have him in League One. And it was interesting listening to his Sky interview after the game where they asked him about that, and I thought his answer was brilliant. He was sort of asked, you wouldn't have signed for any other club in League One, would you? And he would say, well, I had to earn my place in this league still. I haven't just waltzed into the Championship. I had to earn my place back here. And he does seem very driven to prove himself all over again, doesn't he? Even though he's not a young man in footballing terms anymore, he's closer to 30 than he is 20. He got off to a good start, didn't he? And he played really well.
No, he did, and I think it impacted us when he went off the field. And what I like about Pritchard is that you can focus on all of the nice footballing stuff he does. He's got a great eye for a pass. He can control the ball. There was a few in the first half where he tried to sort of spring Ross Stewart or Lyndon Gooch on the right hand side, and he got there on a few occasions. But I think he really sets a tempo for us as a team off the ball as well. He does a lot of donkey work, which you wouldn't necessarily expect from a player like Pritchard. And in itself, that type of behaviour has real leadership qualities. And you look at Alex Neil talking earlier in the week about the model that we were implementing, And yes, it's based on bringing in younger players who will have resale value and we can coach them and make them better. But that's got to be complemented by a senior group of pros who can, help do that. And Alex Pritchard is one of those senior pros at the club. And he's a different type of leader to Danny Barth and Bailey Wright. But he's a good leader for us. And I think he can become, something of our sort of talisman throughout the season. Look, he's got a point to prove, hasn't he? He's had a couple of bad years at Huddersfield, had a big move there, didn't work out. I think Huddersfield fans hold him in the same regard as we hold Jack Rodwell, which we can't believe when you look at what we've seen over the past 12 months, can you? But
yeah, well, I spoke to a Huddersfield fan the other day, and I asked them about that. I said, I honestly can't believe the way that your fans think about him, because we have not seen that player.
Yeah.
And not that they're lying, that obviously happened. He obviously had a really bad 3 years with Huddersfield, but I think what we've seen is a much more mature Alex Pritchard. Has probably reflected on what was really a difficult period in his life and his career, and that's kept him hungry. Like we are getting a player in Alex Pritchard who we know is capable of playing probably in any team in this league, really.
Yeah.
He wouldn't look out of place in any of them, would he?
No, he wouldn't. And look, we haven't seen that type of player. We haven't seen that type of person as well. Like, he's got everything. And, players, people go through changes in life, don't they? Where, you think about things and you've got a different mentality and attitude to something that you had 3 or 4 years ago. And it's part of human nature. So, whether something's just clicked for him or, he's just got his fitness, got his confidence, who knows? But there's times in the season where he'll be on the bench and, to have him as an option. And I actually thought you'd be on the bench for the Coventry game, because I thought with the last 30 minutes to bring him on could be a game changer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, look, I think he's a very important player for us this season, and he can offer so much all over the park, really.
Yeah. A couple other things from the game then. We've got to talk about the ref. Like, one, what the hell was that in his hair? And two, the referees at this level, I mean, if that's the standard, they're not much better than League One. Jesus. I thought he was terrible, Craig. Just didn't seem to want to give Sunderland anything, and blew for everything that was half a foul if it was on a Coventry player. Sign the things to come, or
I certainly
have we just got a particularly bad ref who... I mean, the thing in his hair told me that he knew he was on TV at least, and he wanted to show off a bit.
I'm not. To be fair, I'm not commenting about anybody's fashion. Like, if he thinks he can pull that off at whatever age he is, fair play to him. But like, no, he was absolutely terrible. And I know he'd done one of our games last year. I think he'd done the Shrewsbury game at the back end of the season, and. Right. I mean, I have no memories of him from that day, but he's perhaps trying to make a name for himself in front of the Sky cameras, big crowd. But there was a lot of things he was blown for, either side. I mean, typically, we had the most fouls conceded, of course, but he could have just let them go. There was a really good game of football brewing in that first half, but the amount of stop-start and the amount of favourable decisions that he was given to them, and it was one of them where you were getting to a point thinking, like, what does Ross Stewart need to do here to win a free kick? Because he was getting dragged all over.
It was unreal.
It was embarrassing at times to watch.
Back and all sorts, isn't it?
It reminded me of Niall Quinn back in the day.
Exactly
when
that.
Quinn used to just get belted all over the place, kneed in the back.
And getting out.
Never got a foul for it.
So I certainly hope that's another sign of things to come. But, I mean, interestingly, there was nothing mentioned in the post-match comments from Alex Neil and that, but I think that really sums up the type of bloke he is. He doesn't want to look for excuses or anything like that. We've both played in the same conditions, but let's see. We'll wait and see. We might be moaning about it next week.
It's interesting with the refs. So I was reading yesterday about the new guidance that they've been given, and they've been told to let fouls go if they're not serious fouls, so only blow up for proper fouls and not start the game, and to cut down on time wasting. And I thought for the first 15 minutes or so, he did actually let a few things go that would normally be blown up for. But after that, he blew up for pretty much anything that we did. And you look at the stats, I think he blew up for 16 fouls against us and only 6 for Coventry. And I don't think it was weight. The game wasn't weighted like that
No.
I think it was a fairly even game in terms of the tackles and the physicality.
It was. I think we both matched each other equally, and if anything, they probably should have just shaded it in terms of, like I say, just on Stewart's back, and we got nothing. And then there was a period where like Embleton went down, and he just looked at him like a bag of shit, as if like, what are you even doing, trying to like get a foul for this, and then a couple of minutes later, the exact same thing, and you give it to Coventry. But like I say, it just stopped. It stopped the game so many times, and there was a good floater in the first half, especially when we were on top. I'm not saying we would have capitalised, but there's a good chance that we could have kept that rhythm and momentum going.
Even that booking Jack Clarke got, that was probably the softest foul of the whole game, and he booked Clarke, and Ballard had the lad's shirt off pretty much every time he went near him, and it took a while for him to book Ballard. That's going to be something we'll need to watch Ballard with, like, because he'll give a penalty away, because people have been watching that on TV yesterday.
Yeah.
Every time he went near that lad, he had a shirt.
A couple of the things then. We've got to give credit to the Spirit of 37 group, the display before the game. The amount of work that's gone into that just for what was effectively like a couple of minutes of a display is unreal, really. Like all the fundraising, the work that goes into actually creating the designs, printing work, collecting it, making sure that every seat had a card on it, planning the actual the unfurling of the giant surfer that was in the south stand, the flags around the sides. There was the 2 big banners with the messages on them that were in the east stand. Volunteer effort taking place to collect all the rubbish in that's been left off the back of it, off all the cards and stuff. What an effort, like, to do something just to basically show the world, like, we are Sunderland, this is who we are, this is our identity. Everything that was in the tifos and the banners and stuff was around who we are as a people. It was mint, wasn't it? I actually looked at it, especially when I saw the ship in the east stand, and I was like, that's mint, that.
Yeah, it was class.
I was a bit taken back by it. It was brilliant.
Like you say, in terms of the hours they put into that, I mean, I've spoke to Jamie a couple of times, in particular before the Sheffield Wednesday playoff game, and like they go down to the Stadium of Light a couple of times a week, and it's not just like they're there for like half an hour or whatever. They are there for hours upon hours upon hours sorting this out. Saturday afternoon, they're in there with all the cards, and then obviously we had really bad weather overnight. So morning they were back in, like, fixing all of that, and like I say, essentially they get nothing from it apart from obviously that 2-3 minutes before kickoff. But a lot of people have, me in particular as well, have complained about the atmosphere inside the Stadium of Light for like a long time, especially when the away fans moved. And we've all said that, the stadium, it looks a bit soulless at times, it looks a bit drab, because it's been, it's been let go a bit, hasn't it, really? There's been no effort to sort of tidy the place up or anything, but all of a sudden when you come in now and Dance of the Nights is playing and you see all those crowd mosaics going up, it really does, just gives you a sense of pride again a little bit, and that's been sort of sucked out of us for a good number of years now. So look, they're going to be asking for obviously more fundraising over the course of the season, and to be fair, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And to be fair, Sky give us an awful lot of credit for it as well, and they give them a shout out. It's a tremendous effort. I know the Mags think we copy them for everything they do, but no, I think it really does add something to it.
I think after the Wembley game, it might have got sort of lost in the aftermath of winning promotion, but obviously they've done an awful lot of work for the Wembley game, didn't they? And they weren't allowed to use it last minute, so it was nice to see everything that went off on Sunday, because, as Craig said, it makes such a difference. And I think it just gives everybody a lift and gives everybody that pride in the club. And, it's a good couple of minutes, isn't it?
And it shows potential signings. It shows anybody looking around the world at that. It's just a nice thing to show off sometimes, that we're proud of who we are.
Well, I know Luke O'Nine came out and he spoke with volunteers at the end, and he said it really does add obviously to the atmosphere, and he said he thinks the players really do respond to it. And I know Dan Ballard as well, he came out, and I think he said he was a little bit overwhelmed by it, like to basically come out and play in front of 40,000 fans. That was his first big sort of crowd that he's ever played in front of. But I think everybody responded to the occasion, and they really should be taking the plaudits for setting that all up. It was quality.
Yeah, the probably big sort of dampener on the whole day for me was the yet again crap being thrown down from the away end onto the fans in the north stand. I think there was a couple of flares thrown down, which apparently one of which landed on a little girl. Glass bottles, we've got to talk about it. Craig, you were there, same as me. What needs to happen? Because this is pretty much every time, isn't it now, that we play somebody and we concede a goal. It's crap's I mean, it's not just a Sunderland problem. Like, this is why there's new laws in place now with regards to stadiums. Like last year, particularly towards the end of the year when teams had things to celebrate, we're seeing a lot more pyrotechnics at games. We're seeing a lot more everything, really, and unsavoury behaviour at games. And now we're in a position where, like, every time we concede a goal, people in the North Stand are going to be wondering, am I going to get a bottle twatted off my head? It's not good, is it? Like, something needs to happen. The club need to do something about it.
Well, what goes through your head? Like, to be fair, like, when we scored, all I wanted to do was just go nuts. Like, so what goes through your head to equalise away from home, 5-6 minutes to go, and you think, could potentially win the game here. But instead, somebody's managed to smuggle, obviously, pyros in. They've smuggled glass bottles in. So, for one, how are they doing it? Because typically when we go away from home, like, we are treated like prisoners the way that we're search going into ground. So I don't know how they managed to smuggle it in, but this has been raised with the club a couple of times, and without being negative towards the club, because I know we've discussed them positively. On the pitch, we're getting a lot right. Away from the pitch, whether it's the retail side, the commercial side, or this sort of side, fan safety, like, we're getting this drastically wrong. This has been going on a while. This happened in the 5-4 game a couple of years ago. It happened with Portsmouth, and it's happened with these again. So there's going to be a lot of people contacting the club. But ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm contacting Coventry. If I'm Sunderland now, I'm contacting Coventry and saying, right, listen, next season, assuming we're in the same division, you're getting no fans here. Like, we are literally clamping down on you because you're repeat offenders. And people might think that's a bit excessive, but, like, at the end of the day, you've got to look after our fans. And if there's kids in the North Stand, which is ultimately our home end, getting shit lobbed at them, it's just not right, especially from that height as well. You could potentially kill somebody. Yeah. And ultimately, that's why the North Stand is so sparse all the time. People don't want to sit there out of fear that people are going to throw shit at them. Now, there's a couple of ways you can respond to it. You can put the netting up. I know that the club turned that down a couple of years ago under Stuart Donald. They said that was too cost excessive and stuff would still get through. You can relocate them. I think that Northumbria Police have said that they're happy to keep them up in the concourse, because essentially you can just need to monitor them from one side rather than obviously from two sides of the ground if they're in the lower bowl. But, like, something needs to be done now. Like, it needs sorting. And I think if this is going to become the new thing again, where arseholes are bringing stuff like that in, then it needs to be stopped. I mean, there was this big thing on Sky the other day saying, like, you will get bans. You will get 3-year bans or 5-year bans for doing it. So, like, why would you risk that? And not just that, like I say, what goes through your head? Like, I don't know the age of these people who've done it, whether it's young lads, grown blokes, whatever, but to launch it over without any consequences, like, literally no remorse or anything, not asked, thrown that over and not bothered about the actions. To be honest, they're just a bunch of fucking arseholes. That's the nicest description you've got for them. Yeah. And ultimately, mind, if this was our fans as well, we'd be calling them out for the same sort of behaviour. Thankfully, we haven't had this. And that's not to say, by the way, like, when pyros are going off and stuff, it doesn't look great. Because, to be fair, at Wembley, it looked mint at full time when they were going off. But just, what are you doing throwing them at people? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So ideally, I want the club to sort this. It's a major issue. And if fans are going to be ultimately thinking, like, I'm not safe going to the ground, it's just not right, is it? No. And it's just, the other side of it is that the turnstiles, like, there needs to be more done to stop it even getting in the ground. Yeah. I know people will always find a way to get things in, but invest a bit of money in it, like, and make the other clubs pay for it if they are repeat offenders. If we've got to stick, like, extra staff on the turnstiles and sniffer dogs and things like that because their fans can't behave themselves, then that shouldn't be as a cost to us necessarily. It's particularly Coventry, like, you've just used them this has happened before. It's not the first time. Apparently it was a glass bottle that was thrown. Yeah, who's taking the glass bottle into the ground in the first? Man, it's just ridiculous. It totally takes the shine off any occasion, any game. We could be talking about somebody being killed by something hitting them on the back of the head. Like, that's how serious this is. The thing about, like, the knock-on sort of consequences with stuff like this as well, though, I mean, there is a bit of needle between us and Coventry. Like, when we've been down there, especially the 1-1 draw when we first dropped into League One, like, their fans, the way they went on at full time was absolutely scandalous, just literally attacking people. And that was, like, blokes with kids and stuff like that, literally just trying to windmill into people. Now, whether that culture's coming back, I've got no idea. But like either way, it needs to stop. But like if that sort of behaviour is going on in the ground, ultimately it's just going to fuel people in other areas. You could get somebody from a different area of the ground thinking, right, I'm going to come out and I'm going to smack a Coventry fan just because of the way that's gone on. And ultimately innocent people are getting caught up. Like I say, those people in the lower north stand. And we could have a different podcast here. We could be talking about, like I say, somebody getting severely injured rather than talk about a good performance. And it's a long-term issue. And I know obviously the Red and White Army, they have the regular meetings, but what I want to see more from them is they do get fobbed off a lot. Steve Davison, perhaps, for use as an example, will say, we'll take this away, we'll come back to it. Say, we really need to start pressing now to say, actually, like, you're not doing anything about these issues. So I'd like to think that there's going to be some sort of answer or some sort of clarity on it, but it needs to stop.
As a club, there's a duty of care, isn't there, really, for anybody who's coming into the ground to be looked after and have a safe environment in which to watch the match. So, you know, we've kind of, to encounter this on day one of the new season, we're not going to be able to relocate away fans this season. You know, you've got season tickets and all that, so it would be a big undertaking to do that, wouldn't it? So they've got to look at either putting that netting up, which will reduce stuff, or, you know, the banning orders that have been put in place. There shouldn't be for if you do something in the ground. It should be if you try to bring anything into the ground. Yeah. You get a banning order. Like, it's got to be, the deterrent's got to be enough to stop people doing it. And there's got to be more steps in place before it actually gets to that point where somebody's doing something, because otherwise it's only going to continue. And, you know, we've seen it from Coventry on a couple of occasions, but it's not just a Coventry issue. Yeah, we saw in the playoffs at the end of last season in different leagues, pitch invasions at Everton. Their last game when they stayed up, there was pitch invasion. Like, It's happening throughout football, which is why those bans have been put in place, haven't they? But there needs to be a strong deterrent. And we need to be proactively finding people who've got things that they're trying to bring into the grounds, because it's only a matter of time before something has a serious consequence. And as you say, that, you know, I was reading something just before where a fellow was saying, like, he'd got hit on the shoulder with a glass bottle and then missed his young kid's head by a couple of millimetres. And if that's a couple of millimetres either way, Craig, you and I have kids, and it would make you think again about taking them, certainly in the North Stand, because you wouldn't want to put them in that position. So it's a huge issue that the club's going to have to sort out. It's
important that all of us continue to raise these, because they are issues, and you're not being arsey by bringing it up. There's a lot at the minute, mainly, in fact, all of it off the pitch stuff. It's frustrating fans. This is the latest one to come to the fore, because yet again we've had problems at a game. And it won't be the last time this season if it's not addressed. And there's other stuff. There's the retail side of things. There's the problem with the ticket office, the problem with the club shop, the problem with just about anything really that's not to do with on the pitch. There's a lot of things like bouncing around in people's heads. We should never feel like we can't bring them up. Like, we have to bring them up. We have to hope that, like you just said, at these meetings that the club have with supporter groups, that they actually start acting on stuff. Particularly now we're out of League One. Like, obviously, we can understand a lot of focus and resource went on just getting the club out of that league. Now we're back in the Championship. It's time to start acting like a big club again.
Yeah.
And like a caring club. We were always the caring club. When I was a kid, I can always remember us being referred to as the caring club. It was something that Bob Murray actually was pretty proud of when he was our owner. I know he did a lot wrong as Sunderland owner, but he also did a lot right. And one thing he did pride himself on was the fact that Sunderland was the caring club. And it's now time, I think, that we start taking a little bit more care in supporters. And this is just one issue, isn't it? I mean, there are many of them. I didn't want to end on a sour note, but we sort of have. We'll quickly touch on the Bristol game then, before we disappear. They lost their first game of the season away at Hull. I don't know if you saw the goals, but Jesus Christ. The penalty was never a penalty. I mean, this is why I'm scared of these referees in the Championship. Because you think the ref we had was bad. I urge people to seek out the highlights from this game, Hull versus Bristol City. The lad trips over his own feet, dives, and then gets a penalty. And then in the very last minute of injury time, Hull's new star signing, Jean-Michael Seri, shoots from range. The ball's going nowhere near the back of the net. Hits a defender, loops over the goalkeeper, goes into the back of the net. So they'll be absolutely sick that they managed to lose that game, having taken the lead, and they're gonna want blood. And they're a good team. Bristol City, I mean, even when Lee Johnson was the manager, they were always there or thereabouts near the playoffs. They're one of the more steady Championship teams, aren't they, who don't seem to go anywhere really. They just sort of mill around in the middle. But is this a chance for 3 points? Do you think, Martin? Are you hoping we're going to go there and get 3 points? How do you think Alex Neil will be thinking about it? Because I think in most cases he'll be happy with just getting any point on the board, but we do have to get a win at some point, don't we? So is this one you think we can win?
Oh, I think we can win. I'm not sure whether we will. There's a couple of bits, isn't there? Like I was talking to Rob Mason a week or two ago, Sunderland historian, about his new book that he's done. But for the past few years, since leaving his full-time job at Sunderland, Rob's been doing he's been writing the Coventry programme, actually, as well as some other bits. Because he's obviously very familiar with the squads in the Championship and the players who are in the Championship and the standard of football. And he said, people are going to get a surprise at the gulf between League One and the Championship. He said, I think it's actually bigger than the Championship, the Premiership is now in terms of step up. And as I say, Bristol City are one of those teams who are, comfortably mid-table, don't really threaten either end too often. But, going away there, a point would be a great point, I think. And, Alex Neil, I think it was in the article in The Athletic, Alex Neil was saying like he'd kind of overestimated the quality of League One in his first few games with us because he's so used to setting up for Championship football. And, setting up for Championship football against better sides, you have to give teams possession to try to spring them out of position. And I think we saw that against Coventry, and I think we'll see a similar game at Bristol where we kind of concede possession to them, we keep our shape, and hopefully spring them on the counter-attack and get a goal. But look, we've got goals in our team, and that's the thing that we'll come back to all season. We've got goals in our team. It's not a situation where we've got a team where you go, you know what, we're going to have to grind out a goal. We're going to have to either get lucky or it's going to be a set piece. We've got the quality to create. You've got Roberts, who was on the bench on Sunday, Clarke, Stewart, Pritchard, Embleton, all capable of scoring. Ellis Sims in the mix there. So we've got goals on our side, and it's just a matter of actually working those opportunities. But sat here now, I think if we got a point on Saturday, I'd be pretty happy and think we've had a good solid start to the season. Yeah,
we'll be back with a proper preview sort of towards the back end of the week, but I will grab some predictions because none of us will be on it. So, Craig, what do you think next weekend? Are you sit on the fence or are you going to see a Sunderland win?
Score draw. I seen earlier that they're I know. I seen that they're expecting a crowd of over 20,000. They're making a pretty big deal out of it. Couldn't tell you what their ground now holds with the extensions and stuff like that, but I think that they're looking to target like a sellout. One of the big things that I think might do us well going away from home this season is Alex Neil's not really scared of anybody, and I think he highlighted that in particular when we went to Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs. A lot of people made such a fuss of Cauldron Hillsborough and all that sort of stuff, and he told the media the day before we played, well, what have we got to be afraid of? We're not going to get punched or anything like that. It's just people being loud, and I think if we can go there with a game plan, we can block that all out, give a good account of ourselves, then yeah, I'd fancy us for at least a draw. But I think obviously the Coventry game certainly illustrated the difference in the gulf and quality that we're going to be coming up against this season. So look, if it is a worst case scenario and we come away and we've got beat, again, it's not panic stations. We are going to go on some patchy runs, I would expect, this season, but the longer we can keep this momentum going, it's certainly going to bode well for us in the long run. So I fancy a point. I'm going to go 1-1.
Martin?
Yeah, I'd be thinking along similar lines to Craig, yeah. 0-0 or 1-1. A win would be nice, but again, I think it'd be a good point.
I'm saying a win. I'm saying Ellis Sims comes off the bench and he gets his goal on his debut, so we'll win 1-0. But to be honest, I know nothing about the Championship. That's one thing this weekend sort of shown me. I sat down on Saturday because obviously we weren't playing. Watched Soccer Saturday, dipped into various games, just watching what was going on. And I looked at the squads, more importantly, of these teams, and I don't know any of the players. In the end, I reverted to my comfort zone. I watched Sheffield versus Portsmouth, just because it's a League One game and I know what's going on. So I've got a lot of learning to do. I'm sure the players do. I'm sure we all do. But hopefully next weekend there'll be a successful exercise or something. We'll have 3 points, 4 points from 2 games. The first 2 games wouldn't be the end of the world, would it? It wouldn't be too shabby. Thanks, lads, for joining us. Cheers, as always. Like I say, hopefully have a preview before the weekend with Chris, once he's back off his piss up somewhere in Europe. That's why he's not yet. He's on his jollies. Catch you all later. Cheers.